In this video, we're going to discuss adding clients in HZCare. First of all, we'll go to the client section and you'll see a list of all of your clients. If you have a lot of clients, then you can click on the search button up at the top and filter the list down. You can filter in first name, when we start typing, and it'll filter in real time. You also have filters for last name, whether the client's third-party pay or private pay. You can specify the client team, as well as whether the client's active or inactive. And by default, the active filter is on. There's also a button for searching by phone or email address or social security number. If we go back here, you'll notice there's also a refresh button at the top. If there's somebody else in your office who's adding a client and they've added them and you click the refresh button, then that client's going to show up on your list as well, without having to leave the page and come back. And finally, there's an add button. So I'm going to click that since we're going to add a new client. And you'll see a series of tabs here that we need to work our way through. So on the first tab, Profile, we'll start filling out the fields. We got a client named Charlie Brown, and you only have to fill out the boxes with stars on them. Middle name, not required. Nickname, not required. The optional fields, just fill out the ones you want. And so we'll set a birthday and an address, state and zip code, phone number, and a phone type. We'll make this mobile. And then finally, we'll give him an email. And if you'd set up referrer categories or referrers in the admin section, you can select those here. I don't have any set up yet. Down here in care information, there's a toggle right here for whether or not you want the start of care date to be set the first time you schedule that client. That's usually what you want to do. You can manually set a start date here if you like, but I'm just going to let that play out on the first time that client's scheduled. For payment type, you can select private pay or third-party pay. I'm going to go with the insurance third-party option, just because that'll give us a more complicated example here to look through all the options. Location code, so you can pick from the different parts of town for where this client is. Team is if you have multiple people in the office that are responsible for different clients. You could select the team that that client goes with. A lot of people will use just team names, the different that are the different office members' names as the team names, but I just have simple red, blue, yellow here. For type of clients, hourly and live-in are your choices. The client doesn't have to be exclusively hourly appointments or live-in appointments, but this helps you sort of categorize them for reporting purposes. And then client status, this client will be active. So let's go to the requirements tab. And all of these sub-tabs that you see under requirements correspond to different sections in the admin section, where you can add whatever options you want to these lists to in turn toggle on the client for helping to build out the picture of the client. So we'll say this client has a dog, and then the requirements sub-tab is a bit unique and it has dates on it. So let's say I want to specify these and set some dates they need to be done by. And after this client's been around for a while, we can start setting last completed dates on these items and update the when they need to be completed again. Skills is going to be anything that the caregiver needs to be able to do to service the client. Permitted activities that are pertinent for the client here. Any allergies, any durable medical equipment the client needs. Functional limitations for the client. And to specify the client's mental status. And again, all of these lists derive from the corresponding names in the admin section. You can update the master list there and then toggle on whatever is relevant for a client here. We'll go to the funding tab. And so within funding, you'll see third-party funding here because we chose the third-party funding option on the profile tab. And that lets us choose from any insurers that we've set up in the admin section. I'm going to select Genworth and hit add. And then if I hit here in the line, then I can get some additional options. For starters here, we have whether or not we want to use the default hour cap that we set up for this insurer, which in the case of Genworth, it was no default hour cap. But let's say we want an hour cap for this this client with Genworth. So we'll toggle off this and specify that we do want to use a cap. And then we'll choose the cap. And then, so what happens when you hit that cap? If we don't turn on a waterfall, then we'll just get an error message if we try to post and the client has more than 40 hours on Genworth for the week. If we do have a waterfall, then we can have hours above 40 go to a different funding source. So let's set up a private pay funding source, click Add New. And we could write somebody in down here, or if the client's self-funding, we can just click Self, and then click the Populate button, and that will copy over the information that we just filled out on the Profile tab. If there's anything we want to change, or I can add a default payment method here, like check, can do that, then hit Done. You'll see that funding source is down here. Can edit the information if we like. But I'm going to turn on the waterfall now, and I'm going to select the overflow as our private pay self-funding funding source we just set up. Okay, so that's a pretty robust funding source example. A lot of times it's just going to be as simple as selecting self-funding and being done with it. But here's a good example to really see what you can do. Let's go to Contacts, and we'll click Add New. I'm going to go with Linus Van Pelt. And again, you only have to fill out the star fields. It's good to have some sort of contact information in here since it's a contact though. Put an email in. And I'm going to hit Done. Okay. On to physicians. So physicians are managed in the admin section. You enter all your physician information there, and then you'll see them on this Other Physicians tab, and you can select the ones that the client uses. And the advantage of them being managed in the admin section is that you'll very likely have some doctors that are used by multiple clients, and when you have to manage any updates to contact information, you can just do it in one place in the admin section instead of having to go into every client's profile. Now, on this demo branch here, I don't have my contact specified for the doctors, but you would when you're doing it for real. We'll move on to Plan of Care. And there's two boxes here, Plan of Care description and other client information. So the caregiver is going to be able to see whatever you write in this box in the HZ Caregiver app when they go to work the appointment. So this is visible to the caregiver. So you'd write out a nice detailed plan of care here, and the caregiver will be able to utilize that in the app. Anything here is just for the office. That's any sort of information that's important to keep up with, but you don't need the caregiver to see. If we go to checklists, this is where you can set up any checklists, or otherwise known as ADLs or activity logs for the client. So there's two ways you can go about this. You can build out your checklist in the admin section and then assign those checklists on the client, or you can build your checklist right here on the client. Now, the reason you might want to do those one way or the other, if you're doing your checklist as sort of a plan of care, then you'd want to build it right here on the client because it's unique for this client. If it's more of a compliance tool, like having to submit ADLs to an insurer, and that list is going to be the same checklist for lots of clients. You want to build that checklist in the admin section and then select it on multiple clients. So let's say we had one like that. We'd be doing use existing hourly checklist. And then perhaps you want to use just the default hourly checklist, or perhaps there's a custom one you've set up in admin. So we could toggle that and choose between the different hourly options. You have both hourly and live-in options you need to set for your hourly and live-in appointments. If we wanted to build out a plan of care style checklist, toggle this to off and start adding items right here. Make breakfast, assist bathing, and you can do the same thing in the live-in checklist. You also have the option to override this for either of your funding sources. So let's say you want this in general, but for an insurer, where Genworth in particular, you want to use that Genworth hourly checklist. So we will toggle this to off, select use a custom hourly checklist, and here we'll select the Genworth hourly checklist. All right, moving on to check-in locations. By default, when the caregiver checks in for an appointment, they're going to check in at the client's home address. It's a geofence check-in. They have to be within a certain radius of the client's address, and normally you want it to be the home address they're checking into. But sometimes, let's say the client is staying at their sister's house, and the caregiver is going to pick them up from that address, then bring them home, and then check out from there. We would want to add the sister's house as a check-in location. So let's do that. And we'll hit done. And so now we have this alternate location that when we're creating an appointment, we can edit the check-in or the checkout location to something other than the home address, namely the sister's house. Client notes lets us enter a nice timestamp note that ends up being a great compliance tool. So if I say this is the client's first note, select a category for that note, and hit add. We get a timestamp note. We see who in the office wrote that note. If we click into it, we can edit it. And the system will save all of the original versions of the note. It'll timestamp the edits and who made the edits. So a terrific compliance tool with notes. We go to Documents, and this is where you can upload PDFs and images to attach to the client. So let's say you had a questionnaire that clients filled out as part of onboarding. I could click Add Image, navigate through my file structure to wherever that PDF is, and click to save it. I don't have one right now, but just if you did, you'd select it, name it, and then you could just click Done, but you have the option to toggle on if that document's used for a requirement. So this is more pertinent with caregiver requirements, where a lot of times you want to upload a license that goes with it. You toggle on the switch, select from your requirement options, select the dates. But in this situation, it's not a requirement document. It's just, we're just going to save that questionnaire. And you hit Done if you're doing it for real. I'm just going to hit Cancel. And we worked our way through all the tabs, so I'm going to click Save. You see Charlie Brown saved right there. One last thing, I'm going to click into it, and you'll see there's a new tab now after you save the client, Web Portal Access. And this lets you grant access to the HZCare client portal for any of your clients, funding sources, contacts, anybody you've given an email address to. So you can see we have the client and the contact, and because the client is a self-funding funding source. They have not only access to seeing the schedule in the client portal, but also for making payments, whereas the contact only sees the schedule. And to give them access, I would just toggle the switch and then click Save. And note that it's only the private pay funding sources that show up in here. You don't have the insurers. All right, so that's everything to do with client management and agency care. You just save this after you toggle that switch to activated, and you're good to go. Have a good one.